This is a Tibet House member video and is a part of the Force for Good class series, now available at tibethouse.us.
Okay, so now best to meditate on this one. Let's do a quick meditation on this. Okay, and notice how it fits with the whole multiple life theme, which is why I always say, don't bother to practice Buddhism. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but don't make a big effort about it unless you have really tangled with this issue and really kind of come to see that you can't really get out of being here, and this will go on life after life. So you're here for the duration. You know, that's the preciousness of your human life endowed with liberty and opportunity. That's what gives you the energy and the motive to really try to transform yourself, to live evolutionarily, to try to be an evolver yourself, in a conscious evolver, because you are an evolver. And it isn't just your genes that you're going to dump them off someplace and then they're going to run off and do something. You personally are going to be involved. So you're going to have the consequence of everything you think and do now, infinitely. That puts infinite pressure on you to think and do and say something just a tiny bit better. Even a tiny bit becomes of infinite importance, right? It's clear. So similarly, meditate now. You've had infinite previous lives, okay? We can't remember them. Maybe some of you have remembered a few. But in theory, there can't be an uncaused cause, a first cause. That nothing that everybody keeps running around freaking out about cannot be a source of anything. Because it's nothing. It's not a place, a space, there's no substance, no energy. It's nothing. It's not there. So nothing can, no something can come from there. Something always comes from something else. So those dogmatic, uncaused cause, first cause, prime mover, all that kind of stuff is just whistling in the dark by philosophers and theologians. Even theists don't even think that, because they think God was there before the universe, you know. So they know then God would be beginningless for them too. So they know about beginninglessness. It's too obvious. And I guess the materialists think nothing was always there. So you come from an infinite nothingness. Point is, you've had infinite numbers of previous lives, and so has everybody else. And therefore, including every cockroach, every mosquito. And therefore, every single one of them has been your mother in some life. You've been theirs too, but that's not useful to dwell upon. What's useful to dwell upon is, all you beings have been my mother. You have all therefore lived for me as your infant. You have cared for me when I was helpless and I was a pain and a pest. I was a little bag of mother's gold. And you kindly cared for me, and you protected me, and you brought me up life after life after life. So I should feel the same concern for you as I do for my old mother of this life. Naturally, at least. Some of us may not. We may have difficulties with our mothers. That can happen in industrial societies. But basically, the role is the most giving of self to another. And all beings have done that for me. That's the first step, called mother recognition. And you can go on for weeks on that. And it's very, very powerful. If you do it within the refuge field, it's much faster than going back to remember your infantile memories on the psychiatrist's couch. You will very quickly be able to, because you have all those memories, actually. We all do. Second is to remember the kindness of the mother and to sort of reflect, if we can't yet remember how our own mother treated us and fed us and protected us, etc., when we were first born, when we were a helpless infant. We probably know someone who's had children. We might have had children ourselves, and we realize how much work it is and how much effort we made and how much, therefore, effort our mother of this life made about us. And we feel the first part of gratitude is infinite, vast appreciation. And we fit that over where we have diffused our sense of kinship and familiarity about our mother of this life by recognizing the motherliness of all beings. And so when we do that, we begin to feel truly sentimental about all beings. We feel that we can sort of feel the loving gaze somewhere in every being, even the one who looks angrily at us because they're rivals or they don't like us. Somewhere in that being there is that motherly gaze. And so we feel grateful for them that they were our mother. Then the second part of gratitude is we deeply wish to repay them. And we can repay them by trying to see that they are happy. And when we want to see how they are happy, we want to imagine them as being happy, because that's not easy. And we come to the fourth step, which is called the step of lovely love, where we think of love meaning the wish for the happiness of the beloved. And when we think about the beings that we know and wish their happiness and try to imagine them as being happy, we see them internally in our mind's eye as beautiful. Therefore it's called lovely love. And we really expand that feeling. And then in this we come to the fifth stage, where, but right around this in the fourth and fifth stage, we add in this thing called the exchange of self-preoccupation for other preoccupation. And where we think that, oh, these mother beings, just like me, I think I should be happy, I want to be happy, and I feel I have a right to be happy. They feel the same way. So the vast infinite ocean of those beings, they all just want to be happy. So I should think more about them being happy than worry about myself being happy. This is called the equal exchange of self-preoccupation for other preoccupations. So I should be preoccupied with their needs and their wishes more than I am obsessed, or shifting my obsession away from my own wish for my own happiness and my own pleasure, my own relief, or whatever it is. And that's where you start expanding this fourth step, built on mother recognition, remembering of kindness, repayment of kindness, and lovely love. And then we move it to connect it with the exchange of self and other. And then we add to it compassion, which goes along with love, because love is imagining the beloved to be happy, but then it bumps into the reality of the beloved, and we begin to see how many things make the beloved unhappy, and we feel that becomes unbearable to us, and that's when we have compassion for them. Compassion is the opposite, in a way, or the other side of the coin of loving and wishing the beloved to be happy. Compassion is feeling compassion and wishing the beloved not to be unhappy, finding their unhappiness unbearable. So this becomes extremely intense, this fourth and fifth steps, bringing to the sixth step, where we reflect about the Buddhas. And we say, well, Buddhas already went through this, they're already bodhisattvas, they already wish everyone to be happy, but I'm still unhappy, and a lot of people seem to be unhappy to me. So it isn't that I'm just going to sit back and accuse the Buddha of abandoning some people. I could get into that, but that wouldn't help. So I'm going to take up the burden of those people that don't seem to yet be happy, even though Buddha is here in the world with them. And then this causes one to focus on one's self in this life and come up with the sixth step, which is called the step of universal responsibility. I will take responsibility for all beings. I will be, so that's those 6 steps are called, combined with, of course, the exchange of self and other, are called the causal steps of this special high-tech precept coming from the future Buddha, Maitreya, actually, through a medium about 2,000 years ago, and a little less, 1,900 years ago, 1,800 years ago. And this then leads to one feeling, okay, I'm going to take universal responsibility. I'm going to make a vow that in all my future lives, I am going to do whatever it takes to make all beings free of suffering, to bring them all into the city of happiness. That's going to be my soul, my underlying, my overriding life's purpose from now on forever in the future. And then that's when one makes the Bodhisattva vow. But notice, that vow is like one thing, I call it the messianic resolution. It's kind of a Messiah vow or a Messiah's vow. It's a vow to be the savior of all beings. However, it's not considering the method of doing so, of course, at this point, but it's vowing to do it. So it makes you too demented to do that if you have not already dislodged the conviction of our materialist upbringing that we don't have a future life, that we're only the body, we're only this body in this life. If you feel that way, you cannot really make such a resolution, I'm going to save all beings from suffering, because you don't have time to, and you're just a person, and you're going to die and then be nothing. So it's too unrealistic, if you follow me. So therefore, don't try to take the Bodhisattva vow unless you have already come to see the empirical reality of the former and future life. That is the one required prerequisite. These Zen Center people, sometimes it's like, sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them all. This kind of thing they say. But they're then going along with the materialist view. They're sort of Zen scientific types. And they think that that's just an old superstition, and they will criticize you for saying that. And this is not correct, we would say. The great Buddhist philosophers would say. Okay? So now, third, so that's the second thing. And once you get that, they say the messianic resolution, the sixth step, you should be feeling a little crazy, because it's like, I've got to save everybody. It makes you feel crazy. It means you're succeeding in it when you feel a little crazy. But where you then shift into the Bodhisattva vow is you say, well, in order to really save everybody, I have to become a perfect Buddha. Because with my present understanding, my present skill, my present knowledge, I would not be able to save everybody, of course. So I have to become a Buddha to be able to do it. So then you sort of fit back into you get on the winning team, the Buddha team, and it calms you down a little bit. So then you feel calm and delighted when you then take the Bodhisattva vow. You feel delighted because you become a child of the Buddha. You enter the Buddha family. You're reborn again in the Buddha family. So on the one hand, don't think of it. Don't even think about it if you haven't first thought about your relationship to your own future lives. Because if you're here intertwined with all your mother beings for infinite future lives, then you might as well be a Buddha. And it would be really better that they be Buddhas, so that nobody will be harmful or in any way difficult for anybody else. Everybody will be already enlightened in a way, as in the case of Shiva, working with Avalokiteshvara. Okay, so now the third thing is, of course, even with that compassion and even with transcendent renunciation, you cannot liberate beings, you cannot become enlightened. As Shantideva says, everything the Buddha taught was for the sake of teaching wisdom. And people, finally, it's only your own wisdom that will free you from suffering. Nobody else can do it for you. Compassion alone won't do it, and transcendence alone won't do it. They're essential to get going, but you yourself have to do it by understanding. And so the first thing you do in that is you start looking for yourself. You understand the Buddha's teaching that the problem we have is that we reify, we invest in things, we exaggerate about things by habitual instinct and sometimes by conscious theory, that everything has an intrinsic reality. That, the leg of that camera has some intrinsic legness about it. It has a leg essence in it. It has the leg thing in itself in it. The camera leg thing in itself in it. When we see it, it seems to be there as if it was objectively there without interacting with me or with the atoms or with the floor or anything. It's just the real leg. And so that's called objective selflessness, the objective self that we presume to be in things. And then the subjective self that we presume to be in things is our own personality self. And when we feel that we're a fixed personality, that our real self-identity is a fixed absolute thing in us, we see others as if they are feeling that about themselves. And we think of them as some sort of absolute thing that they are. So it's most useful to look into oneself. So if you meditate, you look for meditating on selflessness means you look for yourself. It doesn't mean you sit and repeat selflessness, selflessness, selflessness. That's worthless. That will make you nihilistic, if anything. What you do is you sit and you think about what you have, you analyze what you feel is yourself. And your motive there is to find it and to verify that it's there and to validate it against the challenge of the Buddhist scientist, the Buddhist psychologist, the Buddha himself who was a psychologist. You're disagreeing with him because we viscerally do disagree. We think we're here. If we're riding in first class or business class, we think that, it's really great here, in fact. And we really think it's absolutely excellent. So we overinvest in intrinsic realities of persons and things, and the way of meditating on that is to admit to ourselves that we do. And when we admit to ourselves that we do, we then take up the challenge of the great Buddhist scientists like Buddha, Nagarjuna, Sangha, etc., all of them, Dharmakirti, Chandrakirti, down to Tsongkhapa the Dalai Lama, Padmasambhava, whoever it may be. And we say, okay, we don't, and we acknowledge that we viscerally don't think that everything is just relational and contextual, and we think there's some real things in things, and really real things. And so, but we take the challenge to verify that by finding them. So you look into yourself meditatively. Where's my real self? Where is it? Is it in the solar plexus? Is it in the brain? Is it in the throat? Where is it? And when we do that in a realistic way, we will very much come up against some preliminary stages of how we got to feeling, looking for ourselves. We'll think, well, I really became this, I really learned that. And we have to look to all of that, sift through all of our experience. That even the unconscious, eventually even the unconscious level as well as the conscious level. And then we're told that if we do that, we will come into a situation where we will not find any fixed self. When we get there, then we will have an experience as if the self disappears. This was brilliantly explained, again by Taratuko, where he said, our sense of our relative self has been so long smothered within our false construct of an absolute self, the iron cage of feeling I'm an absolute separate self, that when we see through the absolute self, it dissolves through our critical insight. That melting sense of absolute self brings the sense of relative self along with it, and both disappear. And therefore we mustn't get carried away by that kind of experience of disappearing and thinking that's enlightenment, because it's just it's a penultimate step. Enlightenment is rather where we are beyond the duality of being here present or being absent. And there'll be a miracle in the Buddhist case. I mean there'll be a text in the Buddha's case where we will repeat that kind of thing, So when you meditate that, you will lose yourself. And most important, you mustn't think that you found this loss of yourself. You must realize that just the mere losing of it is the finding of it to the extent of generating a cross. And everything will disappear. I don't know what I'm saying. I always do this when I meditate this with a group. We all totally disappear. And If you're really advanced and hip, you'll feel frightened. Oh, I'm going to disappear. I won't know what I am. I'll become demented. Well, you can't. Not from this meditation. You might from food that you eat, bad food. Monsanto treated food, you might. But not from this. Because there's no nothingness for you to go into. It's not there. That's the way of controlling fear, is realizing that you can't ever be nothing. Your continuity and your positive human attitudes and your compassion and your transcendence and your critical insight and intellect that sees the royal reason of relativity will carry you through. And here there's some very valuable verses that I will read. Who sees the inexorable causality of things, of both cyclic life and liberation, that's samsara and nirvana. Because there's a causality even of nirvana, meaning of the realization of it. Actually, nirvana is literally known as the uncaused, but in the process of realizing it has a cause. So therefore there's a causality about samsara and nirvana, or cyclic life and liberation. But who sees therefore that it's inexorable, and destroys any objectivity conviction, that is, destroys any sense of conviction that there's an intrinsic objectivity or essence in anything. That's a beginning step. Thus finds the path that pleases victors. That means then Buddhas will like that when we do that. That's the path of recognizing, even though there's no objectivity anywhere, intrinsic objectivity anywhere, there is inexorable causality of all relational things. The experience of nirvana even itself being a relational thing, although nirvana by definition is not a relational thing, but its experience is. And of course, samsara, we know that's a causal process. Then he says, appearance inevitably relative. Anything that you see, anything that you engage with is inevitably relative. And voidness is free from all assertions. And emptiness is inconceivable, and it's beyond capturing by word or theory. Deep nature of reality, in other words. As long as these are understood apart, the victor's intent is not yet known. So the non-duality of those two things, a sense of voidness as if it were some sort of place of freedom beyond all conception, and all kind of inevitably relative appearances, or experiences, or perceptions. As long as they are understood apart, in other words, dualistically, the victor's intent is not yet known. But when they coincide, not alternating, this is really important, this verse. Mere sight of inevitable relativity secures your knowledge beyond objectivisms. So that is really good. Like I see the pillar, to me that pillar seems to be objectively real, but the fact that I see it, and even that I see it in a way, seeming way, which I have by thought experiment and by philosophical analysis realized it cannot be objectively real, it's only a relational thing. So I'm seeing it through a kind of misknowing habit or misknowledge habit. But the fact that I'm even doing that and having a misknowledge about it means it is relational. It is, even though it's the seeming of it as if it were non-relational, is relational. So therefore, mere sight of inevitable relativity secures knowledge beyond objectivisms, and projecting an intrinsic objectivity in the thing. And investigation of the view is perfect, because the voidness of inconceivability, beyond free from all assertions, and the inevitable relative appearance are coinciding, not alternating. And then he goes one step further, which is very, very important. That's sort of true non-duality, that one. But then he goes even further. He says, more, as experience dispels absolutism, and voidness clears away nihilism, you know voidness dawn as cause and effect. And then you will never be deprived by extremist views. So this is the closest thing to really sealing the two non-duality things together. Because normally, you see, experience dispels nihilism, and voidness dispels absolutism. Because absolutism means, investing in absoluteness in the pillar. And then knowing that it's void, meaning it has no intrinsic pillar-ness in it, would be dispelling absolutism normally. Voidness would be the counteractor for absolutism. And then the fact that things are relative would be the counter for nihilism, that I'm mistaking of the voidness as nothingness, if you follow me. But here he's reversing that, and he's saying that experience or appearance gets rid of absolutism. That is, even if I see something as absolute, I'm seeing it, even I'm making that mistake, it is relative. Because I wouldn't see it, and I wouldn't be able to make the mistake if it was absolute. And similarly, voidness, having seen it disappear, but returned, and even that its disappeared state and its presence are coinciding and not alternating, because I'm seeing them like a reflection in a mirror, that clears away nihilism. Voidness clears away nihilism. It's so cool, really. And then to do that, if you get that, you don't have to go and read Leixi Ningbo all the time. You just see anything in front of you. You feel yourself, I'm really here. And you know you're relative. So it's a double bind, it's a quadruple double bind that makes you able to meditate in the surface of your experience all the time, day and night, on emptiness. Because when you're seeing everything, the fact that you see it, hear it, think it, it means it's empty. You wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't empty. Because it's empty of any separate existence, all of it, you're constantly engaged with it. So that's where it's all coinciding. So you know voidness itself, dawn as cause and effect. Then you will never be deprived by extremist views. You can't fall back either into absolutism or nihilism. Those are really profound and wonderful verses. Okay, so I've talked for 1 hour and 36 minutes, which leaves us a few minutes for questions. And I am going to